Hi, I'm Paul Abraham, based out of Mumbai, and been in lockdown for over a month and a half now, sitting at home thinking about this whole pandemic. When it suddenly struck me that we have an album of a similar event that happened last century or a century and a half ago in India, in Mumbai, and that was the great bubonic plague of the late 1890s. When I picked up this album and I started flicking through the pages, looking at the photographs, looking at the little story written in there, it was a tremendous sense of déjà vu, because some of the words that were mentioned in there were quarantine, inspection, tests, frontline medical workers, sanitation, chawls and bastis, concentrated slum-like conditions, and the need for health infrastructure. Amazing, isn't it? Given the fact that we seem to be talking about just these very things today. So, just a bit of background on that plague. It came to India in 1896, actually started in China. When it came to India, most likely bought here by somebody on a ship. There was a lot of trade between India and China at that time. It was first discovered in Mumbai, in Mandvi, which is South Mumbai, by a Dr. Acacio Vegas, and he was the president of the Bombay Municipal Corporation. There was a lot of skepticism around his claim that this was indeed the bubonic plague, and experts were brought in who actually confirmed the fact that this was indeed the plague. Immediately, the governor of Mumbai brought in a famous immunologist of his time, Dr. Hafkind, and had him set up a research lab to quickly try and figure a vaccine for the plague. This research lab was set up in the current JJ hospital and then moved to the government house in Parel, where the Hafkind Institute of today is housed. The plague, of course, started to catch on like wildfire, and between September and December, almost 2,000 deaths a day started to take place. And it caused panic amongst the people. A lot of them started to run away and leave Bombay and go back to the villages. And of course, that meant carrying the plague into the hinterland. And the other center that exploded with the plague was Pune. The measures to control this illness were seen to be rather harsh and offensive, and it reached a point where the common man was actually getting really upset. And in Pune, there were two brothers, the Chapekar brothers, who actually murdered the chairman of the plague committee. His name was W.C. Rand. And this caused a lot of reprisal kind of action that happened there. The plague killed 1 million people in the first few months of its commencement in 1896. And then there was a grudging acceptance of the need to return to some kind of normalcy. And of course, the world went on, not to forget the fact that in the next 30 years, 12.5 million people died from this plague in India. The lessons that were learned from the plague were not missed by the British. In fact, the British Parliament in 1898 actually passed an act and set up the Bombay Improvement Trust to actually make Mumbai a much more open and livable city. The album and pictures inside tell us a rather somber story, but it's also a documentary evidence of a place and a journey that we've traversed before. There are pictures of frontline health workers, there are pictures of inspection committees, there are pictures of crowded parts of the city, there are pictures of death and unhealthy people who got ill, who were being managed in facilities that were set up at short notice. Pretty much like how things are today.